Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about the Greeks' 8 types of love as applied to gay men. So, as a long-term, 29 years in 2021, gay men specialist, psychotherapist, sex therapist, and life, career, relationship executive coach, it's a lot of stuff going on. I have a lot of clinical experience, history to draw from to help new clients and existing clients. So whenever we draw from history, we can find valuable resources from the past just waiting for us to discover. World history can be the same way. And recently I was studying a classic structure from history and literature, the 8 types of love according to the ancient Greeks. And I got to thinking, how can we take these types, so often discussed in heterosexual or heterosexist context, and apply them more specifically to gay men? What can we learn from them to make the lives of gay men, single or in relationships, better? Let's look at each of the 8 types of love that the Greeks purported. And by mining these historical concepts, I think we can find a guide for our perspectives on the types of love today. And examinations of these classic 8 types of love are all over the internet, but I was reviewing one analysis that's available on ftd.com. FTD is the centralized system for sending flowers. So we'll give a nod to FTD. They're not sponsoring the show, but since their article inspired me, we will give them a little love there. That was ftd.com/blog/give and types of love. So let's look at these, in no particular order. But number 1 of the 8 types of love, according to the Greeks, is Philia, Philia, Philia. And this is affectionate love. And it's defined as a love that runs deep in true friendships. Now let's apply it to gay men. This type of love is one that hopefully we all know well, but I've worked with clients who express a frustration that lack it. Whether it was a long time ago as children or teens with our high school group or college or in adulthood, ideally we can name some people, very often our gay male peers, but sometimes with female or straight allies, where we feel the close bonds of friendships. Casual terms like BFF or homie or partner in crime for partying around town come to mind, or even brother from another mother. And gay men I've worked with as clients, especially middle-aged or older guys, have sometimes said that they appreciate socializing mostly with non-sexual, non-romantic people in their lives as single men versus emphasizing the hunt for finding a partner or spouse. But when we lack this kind of love, when we have a feeling that we don't really have a deep love in the friend sense, maybe because we've moved away and we don't see old friends, or maybe because we have just not cultivated deeper friendships in our lives, it means we have some work to do. Developing a deep, affectionate love in a friendship certainly takes time. It's a phase that comes after a long time of getting to know someone, sharing experiences, disclosing intimate information to them and receiving theirs back, and building a trust and affection that is not like that of having a partner, but more of a best friend. Sometimes in therapy or coaching, this kind of love needs to be a longer-term goal beyond a shorter-term goal of just getting out there and socializing more, so that strangers can become acquaintances and your acquaintances become friends and they become closer friends, where the Philia type of love can find a home between us. Number 2 is Pragma, Pragma, which is enduring love. And that's a mature love that develops over time. Now, how do we apply this to gay men? Some of my clients are in relationships where they have attained this type of love with their partner or husband. They often describe it in a very similar way, that their love has deepened and seasoned like a wine that has aged into a depth of flavor. just by being in a relationship for a long time. And this can be with both monogamous and C&M, consensual, non-monogamous relationships. I just completed a continuing education training program for professionals from the Sexual Health Alliance, where I did my certified sex therapist training. And this certificated program in consensual non-monogamous was all about learning about non-monogamy and polyamory in greater depth. It's not for everybody, because I work with gay men in consensual non-monogamy and its many variations, and I also work with guys in monogamous relationships. And even that is defined different ways by different people, because a very common topic that guys need help with that I do in my work is around this issue of ambivalence around monogamy, and it really helps to have support for that. But even if a couple doesn't even live together, if they're doing the long distance thing, but have known each other for a long time and lived through various developmental stages in life, they can still be sharing a deep pragma, enduring love for each other along the way. And this type of love, of knowing and trusting someone very profoundly, is often a goal of younger gay men I work with. They have seen this type of mature, long-term love flourish, perhaps with their grandparents, or their parents, or their older siblings, or just other gay men who are a bit older, who have attained the enduring love that comes with a long-term relationship over time. This kind of love often evokes someone to ask the couple, hey, what's your secret? They've been together so long and they really have something. And they get various answers about respect, honesty, sharing fun together, being able to work through challenges and differences, enjoying good health. That's a big one as you get older. And maybe just good luck, too. This type of love exists in the gay male communities all the world over, and is sometimes depicted in movies like The Birdcage with Robin Williams, that was based on the La Cage aux Folles story, or Longtime Companion. Some of the AIDS-themed movies along the way have depicted what it means to have an enduring long-term love. It can also prompt envy by other gay men, who are frustrated by the dating scene and all the craziness that comes with that, or who lack a partner at all, or one that fulfills them the way they've observed in others. This type of love can be a certain romantic life goal for younger men, younger gay men, and it happens for some and not for others. And how much happens to us versus how much we create this for our own lives perhaps is subject to discussion or debate. I think it's a combination of both. You can't just will or force it to happen, but you also need to do your part to cultivate the conditions, especially over the long term, where this kind of love can develop. And I think that's where my work supporting couples in relationship coaching or couples therapy is the support that couples need to get past impasses and hopefully come out the other side with a skill set or a wisdom that helps them in the long term. Number 3 is storge love, S-T-O-R-G-E, storge. And that's familiar love, a love that flows between parents and children or childhood friends. So as applied to gay men, what do we find? So for gay men who actually are parents, they would understand this type of love firsthand. Many people of any sexual orientation who are parents describe the love for their children as profound and very primal, very instinctual of the human animal. And most of the time it works this way. However, many gay men know that in some situations, parents actually do not love their children. This is a horrible reality. Stephen Sondheim, the great Broadway composer who passed away recently in 2021, told a story often about how his mother expressed that she did not love him and regretted having him. Horrible situation. Stephen Sondheim highlights that phenomenon because he was a famous person, but this happens sometimes with people who are not famous. So Some parents let their pathological devotion to religious or concepts make them capable of a sadistic cruelty to their gay sons or other LGBT children that leads them to kick them out of the house. Lately, I've been working with 3 or 4 clients who tell me the story about how they were kicked out of their house in their mid to late teens just for being gay from their parents. Other situations, you have parent neglect. If parents are in over their heads with drugs or alcohol, it can lead to neglecting their children. And in some very rare but still very tragic cases, it's possible for parents to literally torture and murder their children. There were 2 cases in California over the last handful of years where this happened and got past the apparently very incompetent social workers with the Department of Children and Family Services. I don't know what was going on there. As a social worker myself, although I didn't do work with children, somebody's got to answer for that. But gay men live with the burden of knowing that parents do not always love their children, and this is a very serious psychiatric pathology that runs in a range from anti-gay disapproval or disgust to violent destruction of their own children, which is something that most straight children, except the ones who are emotionally, physically, or sexually abused, don't realize. It is a privilege for children to only experience their parents as reasonably loving and avoid first-hand experience of parental abuse or hatred. But for the parents or the children who experience storge, it can be an exquisite human experience, which is easy to understand why the Greeks identified and exalted this type of love. The other part of this meaning, love between childhood friends, can also hold a special place in our hearts for many years to come and can give us fond memories, whether we lost touch with those childhood friends or whether we kept them for a lifetime. Facebook has brought back a lot of childhood friends and high school friends, I think. If you're a gay man who enjoys storge in his life, cherish that. However, if you are a gay man who is estranged from his parents from a lack of storge, or lost or never had this type of affection among childhood friends, see if you can take a self-empowered approach. One of my favorite concepts in my practice, such as in my book cue here, book plug here, Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want. That's available on Amazon or other places you find books. Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want by Ken Howard, LCSW. And see if you can enact behaviors to cultivate a type of storge in your life. For example, if you don't have parents because you're either estranged from them or because they've passed away, try to cultivate maternal or paternal-like friendships in your life. This could be with coworkers, neighbors, mentors, or older people that you meet through any social contact, clubs, organizations, community events, outside walking your dog. I have a handful of elderly friends, and I'm really lucky because it's kind of unusual to have intergenerational friendships, but they really are great because I pick up a lot of great advice, and I think I also give them an opportunity to stay active if we go out somewhere. And, a lot of older people are very lonely. So, sometimes you can find really, really good friends in older people, and it's really lovely in this intergenerational type of friendship. Or even if you are the older person, don't feel like being friends with younger people is cut off to you, because you can really learn from each other on a practical level, and you can also just enjoy each other's company. So many people describe how their relationships with other older individuals can be like a mother or father to me. Even if your own parents are still alive and everything's fine, you could still benefit from other people your parents' age to be social friends with occasionally. Try that and see. I think you'd really like it. Or if you don't have children, see if there's a way that you might support younger people. So I did a podcast episode. There's also a blog article version on gaytherapyla.com on how gay men can satisfy the paternal instinct. And it gets a lot of hits because, wanting to be a father and yet wanting to make babies with women are two different things. Same thing with lesbians. Some lesbians really want to be mothers, but they don't necessarily want to make babies with men. So your sexual orientation and your paternal instinct run as separate variables in your emotional life. And even if you choose not to have, actual children, although you could, look at other ways to satisfy the paternal instinct. It could be with pets. It could be with some kind of volunteer work. It could even be more abstract, like just, if you have the means, fund a student scholarship of some kind that has meaning for you. So if you want, check out how gay men can satisfy the paternal instinct, either on gaytherapyla.com or a previous episode of the show here. So just because you don't have actual parents or actual children doesn't mean that you are cut off from experiencing storge in your life. So number 4 of the 8 types of love is Eros. We all have probably heard about that. That's romantic love, and that's defined as personal infatuation and physical pleasure. So, as applied to gay men, I can hear it now. I think many gay men would react to a mention of this type of love pretty enthusiastically. Gay men's enthusiasm about sex, whether it's with a partner or dating or a hookup through an app or somebody you meet at a bar or a club or out cruising or just any opportunity to appreciate the erotic energy of another guy is well known. But, let's be fair, I don't think gay men are necessarily any more sexual than straight people. That's one of the big things I learned in my sex therapist training, is that, everything gay men think they invented in terms of kink probably was invented first by straight people, because straight people can be just as kinky. But part of homophobia can be that we are labeled inordinately focused on sex. That's a type of prejudice in the world. Because of sex negativity in society, labeling someone as overly focused on sex can be a way of insulting them. It's certainly a part of homophobia. But the revenues from porn and apps and bars and clubs and bathhouses and sex clubs and other commercialized opportunities around gay men and Eros show that this type of love is an important force in our gay world. You only need to look at how much money is made from the Eros physical pleasure idea to understand how pervasive and how important it is in humans' lives, but we're looking at gay men here. Eros in the life of a gay man can be an important celebratory element of our quality of life overall. Despite the rampant disparaging from bigoted homophobes who want to slut-shame gay men or label us sex addicts, that's a widely discredited concept for many legitimate sex therapists or psychotherapists, or undermine the legitimacy of our own sexual expression, such as through disparities in age of consent laws worldwide. That's a problem. The lack of legal rights in so many countries, not all. Discrimination, of course, oppression, violent hate crimes, even legalized government execution of gay men in some countries of the world, usually countries with conservative, extreme Muslim governments. Eros often thrives in the lives of gay men worldwide, for just like the need for food and water and basic health, protection from the elements of heat and cold. Eros is an important part of living that needs recognition and validation and protection and expression. For some gay men, their celebration of Eros is robust. They enjoy sex of the type and frequency they want. For others, they suffer with a lack of opportunity for the expression of Eros in their lives. And this lack can be the purview of therapy and coaching and sex therapy to convert from one state of being, a lack of Eros, to another state of being where Eros is enjoyed in the way that feels right for you in your individual value system. I work with clients on this a lot about, can you bring into alignment the way your life is with the individual value system that you have, and looking at where the adjustments need to be. What does there need to be more of, or what does there need to be less of for you to be in alignment with your individual values? Not the values from the Pope or from your parents or from society or whatever, but what are your values when it comes to the cultivation and the expression of these 8 types of love? And I work with many gay men in my practice on how to identify and then implement living by the value system that works for you in relation to Eros or any of these types of love. So the 5th one, number 5, is Ludus, Ludus, and that's playful love, and that's flirting and beginning stages of intimate love. So as applied to gay men, it's similar to Eros. Gay men, perhaps especially, can be masters of flirting and the beginning stages of intimate love. Cruising can be seen this way. Sending a guy a message on a gay website or an app, can be this kind of flirtation. Approaching a gay man in a bar or a club can be. Buying a guy a drink, dancing with him, chatting him up at the gym or a park, making eye contact, inviting him to a meal, asking him questions in the setting that you're in, such as standing in line to check out at a store, can all be ways of flirting and expressing that exciting initial attraction that can feel a little scary and playful and full of potential of where those initial seconds or interaction might lead. In some cases, it leads to sharing a life together as a partner or spouse for many years. Gay men who have been partnered or married for a long time can probably remember when Ludus was first introduced into their lives with their partner. I remember some, not all, of the initial conversation that I had with my now husband of 19 years in 2021 at a Sunday tea dance at a Cinco de Mayo club event. And we weren't understandably in love yet, but those initial moments of attraction and social goodwill were part of the initial Ludus that evolved into other types of love later on. The fun part of Ludus is that it can happen spontaneously, anywhere, anytime, with even the most chance social encounter, like being seated next to each other on an airplane or at the theater. I always advise my gay male clients in search of a partner to put yourself out there into being active in your local community, to be what I call both interested in him and interesting about yourself, because you can't create that initial moment, that millisecond really, of Ludus without being out in the world where gay men are, which is really anywhere. Number 6 is Mania, or obsessive love. We've probably heard the word mania like in bipolar disorder or other types of, like a media craze, but in this case the word mania is an obsessive love, and it's defined as obsessiveness or madness over a love partner. So as applied to gay men, I conduct a good deal of couples therapy or relationship coaching, over many years now, 29 years, for gay male couples. And this type of love, mania, is a fairly frequent topic because it's difficult to have a relationship with someone without some form, however small, however strong, of obsessiveness or jealousy or some kind of irrational or misguided thinking and behavior, being at least a risk of it there, if not a very present element in a relationship. And it's just a human vulnerability that we all have in varying degrees. If we look at the animal kingdom, there's a lot of animals that protect their territory. I was watching a documentary on hummingbirds. Hummingbirds will defend their territory. Certainly, gorillas, dogs, cats, this whole thing about defending what you perceive as yours is a thing that's, very prominent in the animal kingdom. And I think sometimes when gay men are working with jealousy and insecurity, part of it's social dynamics and part of it is instinctual. The way animals protect their territory. And many poets and authors have said that rational thinking and love don't always blend in ideal ways. Part of my work with gay males in male couples in therapy or coaching can be identifying where the mania is in our thoughts or in our behaviors and identifying alternatives that might reduce the drama and the conflict and the heartache. What are alternative ways of thinking? What are alternative ways of behaving that might reduce the level of conflict and frustrating feelings in that relationship. We can also experience mania with unrequited love, which is a difficult phenomenon. Speaking of Stephen Sondheim, his musical called Passion from the mid-90s, gay composer, I might add, explores this idea very deeply and poignantly about unrequited love. And unfortunately, for a relationship to exist and be happy and stable, there needs to be a unanimous vote between the two or more partners that want that relationship to be and to thrive. Even one no vote messes up the whole thing. It's got to be a unanimous vote. Mania can be the risk of passion. We don't want to be stoic or removed in love, but we also want to employ what therapists call affect regulation, which is a fancy term for get a grip on yourself, girl. It's affect, meaning your emotions, or the expression of your emotions really is your affect. And then regulation is like a thermostat that regulates a heating and air conditioning system. It regulates the temperature. So we can experience our emotions, but if our emotions, especially negative ones, like insecurity or jealousy or anger, get the best of us, we need to cultivate ways to manage what we feel with what we think, and how to take care of ourselves and others in an emotionally mature way. And that's part of how we get a grip on mania, is recognizing that everybody can be vulnerable to it, but then we have to do something with it so that it's not destructive to relationships. Number 7 is Philautia, 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 and that's self-love, having a healthy self-compassion, love towards oneself. So also in my work as a gay men specialist, therapist, and coach, I'm frequently, I think daily, working with gay men on improving their self-esteem and their self-concept and their self-efficacy. All of those good self-concepts that are often the work of mental health and social support professionals. When I work with gay men, we often ask collaboratively, how can we cultivate and improve Philautia, or self-love? As gay men, most of us have at least in part internalized the negative messages of a generally homophobic society, either through government policy, such as lack of full legal rights, the news, there's anti-gay stuff in the news seemingly every day, religious influences of so many different types of traditions that are hostile to LGBT people in general and to gay men, I think, in particular. There's peer stress or bullying as kids and sometimes as adults. I've actually experienced workplace bullying in an anti-gay way as an adult. Maybe I'll write about that sometime or do an episode on it. Or hypercritical parents. So when you basically grow up with these kinds of negative influences, it can take a lot of work as an adult to undo that damage to our psyches and restore Philautia, to love and appreciate ourselves as we are. The late New Age author and speaker Louise L. Hay, hayhouse.com, I think, was a master at discussing and inspiring the concept of loving the self. A lot of good things come from that. And she wrote a poem in the back of one of her books called You Can Heal Your Life that said, I love myself, therefore I do this, and I do this, and I do this. It's a great thing to read that will make you feel better about yourself. So it's Louise L. Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, and the poem in the back. Self-love doesn't mean a self-centered, arrogant narcissism that puts our needs and desires over others in ways that run roughshod over the rights and dignity of others. It means more that we take a humanistic approach to ourselves, to love ourselves as we love others, and that we live in a compassion for self and others. We dwell in that realm of compassion, and it's easy to, let go of that. Try being in traffic in Los Angeles. Very hard to have compassion for others sometimes, but we might take responsibility for things that seem to be mistakes in judgment, but we don't extend this into shame or self-hate. I work with guys a lot on this. You can take responsibility for something you've done and say, I made a mistake on this, I'm acting outside of my own ideal value system, but not to extend that into shame of, and therefore I'm a terrible person, and therefore I hate myself. We want to take the and therefore out of it. So the cultivation of Philautia often involves realizing that the bigoted antipathy that was lobbed our way from homophobic others, sometimes in large numbers and constantly growing up to a big magnitude, we have to realize that was their problem with intolerance, and it had nothing to do with us. We were fine all along. It's their intolerance of what being LGBT means. It's often the adult task of gay men to mediate on this concept and to put the blame where it belongs, not on us for being gay, but on them for being intolerant or hateful or oppressive or even murderous. Political or ethnic conflict and strife in many nations of the world would be another example of bigotry, as would racial or gender bigotry. While the responsibility lies with the perpetrators of hate, we as gender and sexual minorities in the LGBT plus community worldwide need to cognitively reframe this from any internalization of these negative messages. The negative messages lead us very insidiously, very slowly over time, into a self-loathing. Instead, we need to cultivate the Philautia that allows us self-compassion and self-appreciation and self-love, whoever we are. And that allows us to thrive in this lifetime. And you know what? May the critics be damned. As Bette Midler said, fuck them if they can't take a joke. If they're going to be intolerant, then you don't need to be around them. So number 8, last but not least, is agape, A-G-A-P-E, and that's a selfless love, an empathic attitude of love for everyone and anyone. So as applied to gay men, I think many historical world figures have been examples of agape, personalities that seem to radiate love for everybody. And while this can be a bullshit public relations stunt and a smokescreen for those who were later revealed to be greedy, narcissistic people, especially in such controversial world historical figures like Mother Teresa, who has been very much discredited along the way since the time of her death, and it's really come out she wasn't nearly as nice as the world originally thought. Or Joel Osteen, that right-wing conservative anti-gay pastor who's made lots and lots of money off of his flock and yet has done almost nothing from a charitable standpoint. Other public figures, contemporaries or historically, seem to inspire us with their take on things. They're the complete opposite of these high-profile, greedy narcissists. Look at, in America anyway, the poet Maya Angelou, who spoke at President Clinton's first inauguration on the Pulse of Morning. Or the singer and songwriter and entrepreneur and great philanthropist buying thousands and thousands, I think even the millions, of free books for children, Dolly Parton. Everybody who knows about Dolly Parton knows what just a positive influence she is. And sure, she's made a lot of money selling records and recording songs and running a theme park, and she's an entrepreneur with the best of them, but she's known for having just this incredible positive, loving agape attitude toward people and life. The actress Betty White from The Golden Girls and from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, with a great comedian with a wonderful sense of humor and compassion for animal causes, who's very, very old now. I think she turns 100 in 2022. We tend to think of her as having kind of a selfless love, an empathic attitude of love for everyone. She's also very pro-gay. The naturist Jane Goodall, who's famous for her work studying chimpanzees and the compassion she shows these endangered animals. These would all be inspiration examples of being especially humanistic or even kind and compassionate to the animal kingdom, and they would be examples of agape. Society in general has oppressed the recognition of gay men as examples of agape. Political leader Harvey Milk, who was a city council person and the mayor of San Francisco, was murdered in San Francisco in the 70s by a fellow city council member who was convicted of murder but then got an egregiously light sentence due to blaming his murderous behavior on consuming too many Twinkie snack cakes. It's called the Twinkie defense, and he got this really bullshit light sentence for murdering 2 people in San Francisco City Hall. Perhaps this concept is something that gay men aspire to on a less public individual basis. I think gay men often inspire to embody agape as a counterforce to the bigotry and antipathy so many of us are subjected to such a large degree and over a sustained period of time. But the challenge would be to say, despite the negativity that's been lobbed at us, we still are able to cultivate agape, because in our value system, that's the way we want to be. Embracing agape toward a world that has only recently been, relatively more accepting overall of gay men, but it's a world where parts of it, gay men are literally subject to state-sanctioned murder, is difficult, because we say, how can we have agape when there's still so many challenges? But, there are many social and philosophical and spiritual traditions that would say because there is hate in the world is exactly why we need to embrace and cultivate agape in ourselves as best we can. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge before us to try to cultivate that. And this is a humanistic challenge for our lives. We're not always perfect. We're not always going to achieve it. But it's the idea of, but can we strive for that? Can we at least try? And especially for gay men as an oppressed sexual minority worldwide. We want to have that agape compassion for others, but at the same time, we also want to set healthy boundaries to fight back against the oppression that we face as well. Because when we fight back against oppression, we're fighting, and there's elements to that are quite aggressive in protests and things like that. But it's not so much being against the oppressors as much as it is supporting the well-being of others, or of ourselves in the LGBT community. So when I do activism and protest work, and I mouth off, sometimes to my detriment, it's not so much that I want to oppress others who are oppressing us. It's more that I want to support the mental health and well-being of gay men, because that's just my thing. That's been my professional mission my whole career, and it's one that I'm very proud to embrace, and it's one that I'm very proud to do and enjoy, indefinitely. I'll retire someday, just not right now. So in my work as a therapist, I've learned through work with thousands of gay men as individuals and couples that we thrive in our quality of life by embracing ideas and concepts, methodologies, strategies, and cognitive behavioral strategies specifically that aid us in so many different life situations. We cultivate and we build a good quality of life by learning as much wisdom as we can about how to get by in this lifetime, while we have one. So by learning many positive concepts like these, the Greeks' 8 types of love, we learn a little bit more about how we can steer our own thinking and our subsequent behavior toward living a higher order of life. And this can bring good stuff: happiness, contentment, peace, wisdom. We don't have to be perfect at identifying or understanding and implementing these concepts like the 8 types of love, but we can try. And in our efforts of trying things like this, we evolve toward being the people and having the world that we really want, especially in the long term. So, if you need help in identifying and implementing positive ways of thinking and behaving that might raise your quality of life, please consider therapy if you're a California resident, where I'm state licensed, or coaching everywhere else, other states, other countries, wherever. And these services are very distinct. There's some legal and ethical aspects to all that, and I can explain those if you want to become a client. But what they have in common is people wanting to come to terms with life's challenges and evolve into just a subjectively better state of functioning. So I'm happy to help with that. For more information or to schedule an appointment, you can call or text me in the United States at 310-339-5778. Again, 310-339-5778. Or you can email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com. Or if you visit the website, gaytherapyla.com, especially /blog for the blog articles, there's a pop-up box. It's a little intrusive, I realize. But there's a pop-up box that will let you put in your name and contact information, and we can, work that way. So also, I welcome your ideas for future podcast episodes. I kind of dream them up based on my work or what I read, but your suggestions and your feedback on the podcast or suggestions for problems or issues you'd like to see me address in a podcast episode, those are also welcome communications, so feel free to do that. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.